We continue now at the top of Daf Kufyud Beizim and Beizim Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 112b. The Mishnah said, "Sachir bizmano nishba v'notel sachir." If it's his time to get paid, meaning if it's not after the deadline, so at that point in time he can take an oath in order to collect his wages. And the Gemara says, "Sachir," when it comes to this worker, "Amai takinu le rabbanon lemishtaba v'shakel." Why did the rabbanon make a takana? Why did they institute that he takes a shvua and collects? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, halachos gedolos shanukan. It's a great halacha that is taught over here, seemingly referencing a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And so the Gemara asks, Hani hilchas ninu, is this a halacha l'Moshe Misinai? Hani takanas ninu, this is an institution from the Rabbanon. Elo Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rather, Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, takanos gedolos shanukan. It's a great takana over here. And the Gemara says, gedolos, a great takana, mechlal dika katanos. That would sound like that there's something like a minor takana that exists. Elamar of Nachman Amar Shmuel. Rather, if Nachman says that Shmuel says takanas kavuos shanukan. We have over here a fixed takana. Shavua de balabayasi. It's really the shvua that the balabayas should take. The Gemara means to say, usually when it comes to a shvua from the Torah, you're taking a shvua in order not to pay. V'yakru rabbanon l'shvua de balabayas. But the rabbanon took away the shvua from the balabayas. V'shadyu asachar. Instead, we have the worker taking the shvua in order to collect. And the reason is mishum kedei chayav desachar. It's because it's the livelihood of the worker. And Rashi explains halachos gedolos shanukan. Great halachos are taught over here. Ka'osam shemanu chachamim b'nishboin v'notlim b'Mesechet Shavuos. We have cases in Mesechet Shavuos, a list of cases where people take the shvua in order to collect. Tesachar v'nigzal v'nechval v'chenvani al pinkaso. Various cases in Mesechet Shavuos. The Gemara then said, Hani halacha ninu b'tzmiya. The Gemara is asking a question. Is this halacha l'Moshe Misinai? V'chi halachos l'Moshe Misinai him? Is this halachos l'Moshe Misinai? V'halo einam ela takonas chachamim. This is just a takana from the chachamim. And the Gemara ultimately said, takonos kavuas. We're talking here about fixed takanas, meaning ro'oi la'asosan keva. It is fitting to make this a permanent kind of takana. La'akor aleim davar min haTorah, because we're really uprooting through this something that's a doraisa. The midoraisa mishayesh olav l'shalim hu nishba, because midoraisa on a Torah level, it's the one who's supposed to pay who takes the oath in order not to pay. T'chsiv, as it's written, v'lokach ba'olav v'lo yeshalim. It says to take the oath in order not to pay. V'hacha, but over here, shakalua l'shvua mi balabayis. They took away the shvua from the balabayis. V'shadyu asachar, and instead, it is the worker that takes the shvua in order to collect. But the Gemara continues, Umishum kedei chayav desachar, for the livelihood of the worker, mefasadna leila balabayis. We're going to cause the balabayis to lose out, that the worker can just take an oath in order to collect. And the Gemara answers to that, balabayis gufei nichale de mishtabes sachar v'shakel. The balabayis himself prefers that the worker be allowed to swear in order to collect. Ki hechi de litgaru leipolim, because that way he'll be able to hire workers. Workers will be encouraged to work if those are the circumstances. But the Gemara continues, you could say the exact opposite. Sachar gufei nichale de mishtabes balabayis v'yifka. Maybe the worker prefers that the balabayis should be able to take an oath, and then v'yifka, the balabayis won't pay, he'll lose his wages under those circumstances. Why? Ki hechi de legru. That way people will be willing to hire. That way you're encouraging employers to hire the workers. And the Gemara says, Balabayis al karche agar. It's not true. Balabayis is going to have to hire people anyway, so it doesn't matter. But the Gemara says, well, if that's your logic, Sacher nami bal karche itkar. A worker also. Worker has to be hired. He has to find work. And so that can't be the reason. So the Gemara gives an entirely other reason. Ella rather, Balabayis torad b'poalim. The real reason is, the Balabayis is torad b'poalim, who he's so busy with his workers, it's very possible that he can forget to pay, and that's why we allow the worker to take an oath that he wasn't paid in order to collect. But the Gemara says if the Balabayis is so busy that he forgets, if so, nesiv le below shvua, we should be able to give the worker, the worker should collect the money without taking the oath. Why are we even requiring the worker to take an oath? And the Gemara says that's kedei lohafis daito shel Balabayis. That's in order to calm the mind, to put the mind of the Balabayis at ease, that he sees the person took an oath. That way he'll know he really owes the money. But the Gemara says, well, if that's the case anyhow, v'nesiv le be'edim, why not just institute that if he's going to pay him, he has to pay him with witnesses? And if he can't bring witnesses that he paid, then he has to pay. The Gemara says, no, trichaluhu mil, so that's already too much of a bother, so we don't do that. But the Gemara continues, "V'neisav le'meikara." Why not pay the worker at the beginning before the worker starts to work, and that will take care of the issue that the Baal Habayis is not so busy then? The Gemara says, no, Shneim rotzim b'hakafa. Both of them really wanted to work with credit. We'll see Rashi in a moment, but the idea is both the employer and the worker, they want that the pay should be at the end of the work. The Gemara continues, "Ihachi, if so, if the real reason over here is that the Baal Habayis forgets because he's so busy, afilu katzatz nami, even if they're arguing about how much the pay was, we should say the same thing, that the Baal Habayis really forgot, and we should believe the worker to take an oath. Alama Tanya, why did we learn in a brayso, uman omer shtayim katzatztali? Let's say the worker says that you were going to pay me 2, v'halo omer lo katzatzti lo chelo achas, and the employer says I only was going to pay you 1. So we don't say that the worker is believed. We say hamotzi mechaveru olav araya. We say that the worker is trying to get money from the Baal Habayis. He has to bring evidence. And to that the Gemara says, Kitzitza vaday midchar dechira le'inshi. When it comes to how much you agreed upon in terms of the wages, that everyone does remember, so the logic does not apply in terms of that dispute. But the Gemara still continues, Ihachi, if so, afilu avar zmano nami, even if the time passed to be paid, still we should say, even when the time has passed, the worker should be able to take an oath to collect. He should take an oath that he wasn't yet paid. Aloma tanan, why do we learn the Mishnah avar zmano eino nishba v'notel? We say that once the time has passed, he's not allowed to take the oath to collect. And the Gemara says to that, no, chazak, we have a presumption, ein Baal Habayis over mishum Baal Tolan, that the Baal Habayis is not going to transgress Baal Tolan. He certainly would have paid by the deadline, so already once the deadline passes, it's too late to take a shvuah. But the Gemara continues, V'amrid Baal Habayis tarad b'pola, but you just said the Baal Habayis is so busy with his workers, maybe he did pass the deadline. You said tarad b'pola, who he's very busy with his workers. The Gemara says, no, hani mili mekame delimti ezman chiyuve, that's only before the time of the obligation to pay. That's when we apply that idea that he's very busy. And Rashi explains, the Gemara ultimately said tarad b'pola, that the Baal Habayis, he's very busy with his workers, v'savar shenasan lo v'lo nasan, it could be he thinks he gave the wages when he really didn't. And then the Gemara suggested, Leisav le be'edim, let's just say that any time the employer pays the workers, it has to be in front of Edim, v'yitein lo below shvuah. That way he'll give it to him without an oath, meaning to say, Liskanu lahen l'chol sochrei polan, we'll make a takana, anyone who hires workers, sheyitnu secharim be'edim, that they have to pay the wages with witnesses, v'im yomar parativ shelo be'edim, and if the owner claims that he paid without witnesses, yitein below shvuah, that's not a good claim, he has to pay, even without the worker taking an oath. Why don't we say that? The Gemara says, trichel hu mil, so that's too much of a bother l'chazer basar edim kol hayom, to find witnesses, to look for witnesses the whole day. Then the Gemara suggested v'neisav le'meikar, well, why not just pay at the beginning before the work starts? Liskon l'Baal Habayis the yoiv agri b'tzafra mekame avidatayil, will pay him in the morning before the work. The yasi sacher lo mehem, and then if the worker comes and says he wasn't paid, he won't be believed. And the Gemara says no, shneim rotzim b'hakafa, they both want that the work should be on credit, meaning the pay should be after the work. And the idea is Baal Habayis po'amim shein lo. Sometimes the Baal Habayis doesn't have the money before the work. He needs that day to get the money together. Upoel shama yiplu mimenu, and the worker, he doesn't want to get paid before he starts working. He's afraid the money's going to fall from him while he's working. And then the Gemara said, Ihachi the Baal Habayis tard v'shachach, if it's true that the Baal Habayis is so busy and he's going to forget. So then the Gemara said, we should say the same thing in terms of, let's say they're arguing in terms of how much wages were stipulated. And then the Gemara said also, afilu avar zmano nami, we should also say, even if it's past the time, we should say that he can take a shvuah. V'tavo l'machar lahem nu l'poel, the worker, even if he claims it the next day, we should believe the worker. And the Gemara then said on that really the Baal Habayis, even though he is busy with his workers, that's only before the time of the chiyuv, but once the time of the chiyuv arrives, so then we do not apply that, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph.